Her first speaking engagement, the White House, at age 19, and she got there by cold calling the President of the United States. Now, we have the absolute privilege of having what I think is one of the best speakers I've ever heard. Here to help us jumpstart our next 100 years of success, please join me in welcoming Joy Baldridge.
Stress, the definition I like the best is one word: demands. So stress is demands. It's the demands you put on yourself. It's the demands others put on you, whether they're physical or emotional. And if you make one minor change, you'll get a major impact that will help you. You see, the problem with stress is, first you get stressed out, then you get burnt out, then you get sick, and then you just run out of the amount of sick days that you feel comfortable taking. I saw a bumper sticker, it said, "Ran out of sick days, tomorrow I'm calling in dead." And I saw another one that said, "I feel so much better now that I've given up hope." But you can't do that. So what can you do? You can commit to making a minor change for major impact. So we've got 4 core human emotions. I call them houses. So you've got the house of mad, the house of glad, the house of sad, and the house of scared. The question to ask yourself is, which house do you live in most, and is it time to move? So when I asked myself this question, I found that I was living in the scared house, and I didn't know why. It was a few years ago when the stock market was horrible, there was so much uncertainty, and business was so precarious, and I just was in the scared house. I was just spending too much money. And have you ever had an out-of-money experience? It's like, oh. And so I thought, I need to get back to glad. I belong in the house of glad. I was raised in the house of glad. And so you will find yourself visiting all the different houses because that's life, you're human, and it's fine. The key is to realize whether you want to make the choice to live in the house of glad as your permanent residence. That's the point. And so you have to keep watching your O drive and do things that will help you stay in the house of glad. And it takes just as much work living in the house of glad as it does to live in any of the other houses. You still have to fix the roof, and you still have to, take care of the lawn and make sure things go well. It's not easy being in the house of glad. My father always used to say, it comes with a warning. I said, what's the warning? He said, if you're too optimistic, people can't take it. They just want to slap you. I said, really? He said, yes, absolutely. He said, you have to enjoy your positive attitude. You have to be a positive person. But be careful not to be over the top because people can't take it. So my favorite definition for joy is calm delight. And that's what I think of when I think of the house of glad. It's calm, it's contentment, it's happiness. And you can get to the house of glad by paying your rent every day. RENT is an acronym. It stands for rest, exercise, nutrition, and thoughts. Got to pay your rent every day to live in the house of glad. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how you can live in the house of glad, pay your rent every day with the R, or rest. You have a pigment in your eye, it's called rhodopsin. And it breaks down in bright light like fluorescent light and sunlight, and it's restored in total darkness. But we're never in a totally dark environment because there's always a light somewhere. It might be a clock glowing at you at night. It might be the moon coming through just the crack between the shade and the windowsill. It might be a night light. There's always sunlight and fluorescent lights outside and in the office. And so when you're always around the light sources, the pigment cannot rejuvenate itself. So my father was in a sleep study in the 1960s, and he was placed in a room that was completely pitch black. And he would sleep in that room, and he noticed after a 3-month period that he needed less and less sleep. By the end of the study, he only needed 3 to 5 hours of sleep a night, and he was completely rejuvenated and energized. And he was so excited until he ended the study and started traveling. And when he traveled at the universities to lecture, he found that he couldn't get the sleep he needed because the sheer curtains of the hotels, because the light sources were all over. And he went back to the regular sleep that he used to get, which was 7, 8, 9 hours. And he was so frustrated that he decided he was going to create a technique, and he started to practice like covering his eyes, and he had eye shields, and he noticed that if he slept with an eye shield, if he covered his eyes 3 or 4 or 5 times a day and just took a purple break, he called it a purple break because rhodopsin is also called visual purple. So he'd say, you know, I think I need a purple break, and he would just cover his eyes, relax, and breathe. And he would count backwards and breathe and count backwards and breathe. So who here gets tired once in a while? Raise your hand. Anybody tired now? Anybody wake up tired? Go to bed tired? Always tired? Well, maybe you two need a purple break.